Hello and welcome to episode 33 of Subplot of Course, a podcast discussing a new science fiction work on the second Tuesday of every month. I'm Stavros, and with me is someone who wishes he had the Thought Police help when he was teaching classes, Charlie. Say hi, Charlie.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Glad to hear that. Also with me is Vincent, who is running the numbers on revolutions led by giant robots. Say hi, Vincent.
Numbers are up. Numbers are going way, way up.
I'm glad to hear it. Vincent is an epidemiologist. Also here is John, who is currently attempting to integrate giant chainsaws into all of his current projects. Say hi, John.
Hello. Absolutely true. Yes.
All right. John is a mechanical engineer. And we're also joined, of course, by Adrian, who only owns 12 portals, each one with a different novel open at the moment. Say hi, Adrian.
Hi, that sounds really troubling.
Adrian teaches English literature. And today we're going to be talking about Cyber Shogun Revolution, published this year in 2020. And I'm happy to say that we actually have the author on with us, Peter Tieryas. Hey, Peter.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back. Can't wait to see what comes up.
Yeah, very excited. So
awesome. All right, and everyone listening, of course, should be prepared for spoilers.
What?
I know, right?
I know. It's almost like we do this every episode.
Can't be too safe when it comes to spoilers. Anyway, and now, Peter, I'm going to go through a plot synopsis, and you can feel free to correct the hell out of me if you so desire.
Okay.
All right.
Remember, listen to all the name pronunciation.
Yeah. This can only end well for me. All right. So, the synopsis of this book. Set in an alternate version of the year 2020, where Japan and Germany won World War II. Tensions inside the United States of Japan are threatening the status quo, even more so than the threat from the Nazis on the Eastern German Americas. Reiko Morikawa is a mech pilot in the army, but also part of the Sons of War, a revolutionary organization inside the USJ who plan to assassinate the current governor, who appears to be engaging in collaboration with the Nazis. That plan nearly goes awry until a mysterious assassin named Bloody Mary kills the governor instead, but then mysteriously disappears. Reiko then teams up with the secret police agent Bishop Wakana to hunt down the assassin and unravel a plot that is even more revolutionary than the ones that the Sons of War had in mind, an attempt by Bloody Mary to completely destroy Los Angeles and catalyze a revolution for the entire Americas. At the climax of the book, Reiko and Bishop confront Bloody Mary and her revolution in progress, and discover that she is none other than Bishop's secret police boss, Akiko Tsukino, one of the main characters in the first book in the trilogy, and is cameoed throughout the second two novels. She defeats Reiko and Bishop in combat but lets them live, then goes on with the revolution, extracting the USJ from the Japanese Empire. How'd I do?
that was great. That
Okay.
was perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
Got them all wrong.
All the details are wrong. Okay. So let's jump right into some discussion topics. So first, I want to say, we were talking a little bit just before the show about how habits are upheaved. There's upheaval in terms of reading habits and book purchasing and all that kind of stuff. But as me as a person who listened to the audiobook, it was actually really good. The voice actress was a woman named Emily Wu Zeller. She has quite a backlog of experience and audiobooks and all kinds of stuff. So that all went well.
Awesome. I still haven't listened to it, but I'm really glad to hear that. So
it's good. She does a really good creepy Bloody Mary voice.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so let's get into some non-audiobook topic stuff. So I think the number one thing that popped up to mind for me, there's way less food in this book. Why is that? I mean, well, first of all, let me ask our co-hosts first before we get into why is that. But is this a better or worse book for the lack of food?
Very different question.
The guy who eats nothing but sausage, and then suddenly he's like, "I had sausage with jam, and it's game changing." I'm like, "Oh my god, Peter, what are you doing to me?" I was like hungry during our first books, and now I'm like about to throw up. Like, oh come on.
I'm sorry.
Did I hear correctly? There's less food in this book than the prior book.
Yeah, so John,
I'm a number 1 and number 3 reader right now, so
Yeah, John skipped the last one. He wasn't in our episode for the last
Number
one.
two
So.
hit like a total peak because it was like set in Berkeley and there's like food everywhere. And it's good, it's well described, good food. And I was like legitimately hungry. This book, I was like,
Bishop is a former chef, right? So it's present in the novel, but I think it feels like it's less there than in the previous ones.
Yeah, definitely. Just to give a little context on that, I think the very first draft I did of Cyber Shogun was actually about twice as long. And there was like a whole lot more world building, and there was a lot of, like food excursions. And there was actually even like a kind of budding romance between Reiko and Bishop. And in the end, I ended up cutting all of it while I was working with the editor. And she really wanted to focus on the revolution. And she felt like a lot of the food excursions, kind of took away from the pacing of the whole story and like the intensity of the action. Because like there'd be like this huge, big pivotal event. And then they'd be like, hey, let's go grab some food. So that kind of broke up the pacing. So I ended up cutting a lot of that. And so like the final book ended up at about 80 or 90,000 words. And like, again, like the first draft was about 160,000 words. So a lot of that was like food, world building. They went to all sorts of weird places for their investigation and stuff. So, yeah. So I think it was just all of that was cut in the service of the plot and the story and the themes.
it's so interesting that you bring that up because I was reading the jacket cover of your book and one of the reviews says, Tieryas perfectly blends humor, action, and romance. And I was what romance? Like, I miss some romance? And then you bring up that you cut out a lot of that romance. I was like, oh, now it makes sense. Because, like, they must have read an advanced copy. Because I was like, what romance? I totally missed it.
Is the romance still canon, though, is the question. Even though
No, it's not. Yeah.
No. Oh, no. No, I put my foot down. There's no shipping on this podcast. Stop. We're done.
I think that the absence of that food, that feeling kind of makes sense in my mind, though. Like, it feels very thematically appropriate for a book that's, like, returning to the dystopianism of that first novel, right? With, like, the food was so much a part of, like, the romance and the fun and the joy of the second book. And for it to be in the past, right, for these characters is kind of really telling.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, when I wrote United States of Japan, and that was about, like, 5 or 6 years ago, I was in a different place. And when I look at it, there's so many things that I wish I could change. And in many ways, Cyber Shogun Revolution is the book I wish USJ was. And that's not to say I regret USJ in any way, but I just felt like Cyber Shogun Revolution had a lot of the elements that I wanted to have in USJ. And I think it did a better job also melding mecha combat. Because when I wrote USJ, I thought of it more as an alternate history novel, and it was more focusing on the tragedies of World War II. Whereas, with Mecha Samurai Empire, it obviously veered into a lot more mecha combat. And then Cyber Shogun, I thought, did a better job of merging those two aspects. So it kind of gave people what they wanted, but also allowed me to explore a lot of these ideas that were kind of driving the entire series.
Yeah, definitely a great point. But it definitely has a different feel to the book, at least. At the very least, I wouldn't say it's better or worse for it necessarily, but when I can't think of like crazy like fusion food, I guess my mind is more focused on mechas chainsawing each other in half. So.
I do. Okay, so I really am curious. I want to ask all of you guys, since we've already gone into spoiler territory, but did you see the Akiko twist coming? That she was Bloody Mary?
Ooh, actually, I was actually lined up to talk about her next. Let's.
Okay, I'll stop there.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about it though. Like, for me personally, I was not completely blindsided because there's that point where they go into the Kikai temple. And they're like, that's weird. Akiko isn't here. And I'm like, And they get up into the boss. I was like, oh, right. I don't know. Were you guys surprised?
I think around halfway through the book when they're just like, nobody knows who she really is. I was like, all right, knowing how reveals works, like either A, she's Akiko, or B, she's like one of the returning characters from the previous book just by numbers. And I guess we got it's just doing plot math. So, and I think, but yeah, around the point, so it was confirmed when, she's missing from the temple, and then they're like, and she's deflecting bullets with her artificial arm. It's like, yeah, okay. But I felt like those were hints that you're supposed to pick up on, definitely. Like, good mystery writing type stuff. So that was good.
Was anyone like completely taken by surprise?
Or felt it was even unearned, that didn't really work, or...
I was taken by surprise because I wasn't like, I don't think I was looking for it to be coming. I was just kind of like following the plot as it went. And I actually really enjoyed it. I like because it was like the epic like plot development. Because in United States Japan, Akiko is already this character that kind of evolves over time, and it's really nice to see like she comes full circle, I guess, to the very end. Where, like she's been through all these betrayals, she's been through all this like hardship in the past, and she's a completely different person. As to whether or not like her actions would have played out the way she wanted them to, that's where I'm left a little bit more wondering, and I'm waiting for Cyber Shogun Revolution's sequel. So book 4 comes out.
Definitely coming. I actually let me quickly add to my feedback. Like I mean, at the end of the first novel, and she's kind of brought back in the subsequent novels. I was kind of like disappointed that she's just like back to being scary secret police person. So like the fact that she came in, and I mean, I'm not sure I really agree with her methods, but the fact that she like took that and did something with it it brought some satisfaction to the end, even though she's Bloody Mary's portrayed as the villain of this book and ultimately succeeds in what she wants to do. It gave some. I'm not sure if I read the novel standalone, it would have done like worked the same way.
But
yeah, like knowing that she went through all the stuff with like Beniko in the first one, that definitely adds something to it.
And at the end of the second one, it's kind of implied that people knew the Berkeley attack was going to happen, but they kind of let it happen. And Akiko's behind the investigation, so I just kind of hint at it, and I never explained that part, but that's also in the sort of background of her sort of arc.
Yeah, I thought that worked without the explicit like, and here's my evil genius plan speech that like I have complained about in a lot of our books. Like I thought that's like.
I don't know, John. What did you think? Did you think she was? I mean, as someone who hasn't read one of these novels in a few years, what do you think?
I was surprised. No, I was looking for characters from because I had read United States of Japan, and it was bittersweet for me actually, because I thought that she was kind of the bad guy. At least I did not feel like she was redeemed in the end. I thought that she was done wrong in the first book, and I kind of wanted her to be a hero. I didn't feel like she was a hero in the end. I don't know if that's what you were going for, but that's how I felt.
I definitely not a hero. I don't. Like, I mean, she is definitely the villain, but I don't necessarily want it to be cast as, oh, she's the hero or she did, good or evil. And I kind of leave all of that, like the actual results and the impact that she had, I kind of leave that ambiguous. So it's up to the reader to decide. But yeah, the main thing is that because of her actions, there's a ripple effect, and it kind of opens up the doors for other revolutions to happen. So
yeah, for sure. And that's something I was going to talk about later, but let's just bring it up now. I mean, let's talk about her revolution's agenda and her methods, and who are the good or bad guys in this novel, if there are any at all. Like my knee jerk is, a little difficult to explain. As we're looking at this as American citizens in 2020, like I keep coming back to, where's the American culture here? If any, I would still view. The Japanese Empire occupying the U.S. and make them automatically the bad guys for that reason. But then you introduce Bloody Mary, who is like the extremist, revolutionary who her methods just involve just killing everyone for a reason that I'm still not really sure about. So like, she's clearly the most evil. I feel like you're picking between the lesser evils here. Like you don't like Bloody Mary because she likes murdering for no reason, because she has this agenda, but like, are any of them good guys? Like I like Bishop and Reiko because you spend a lot of time with them and learn their histories, but like, are they just like another bad guy essentially? What do you guys think?
Well, I think you can still have heroes who are ultimately very compromised. Like I don't think it's a mistake that Reiko is in with this, kind of unjust revolution at the start of the book, and Bishop is a Tokko member, who in previous books are always like the kind of shady, like thought police bad guys. I think that is, I mean, am I wrong? Is that you're supposed to pick up on that, like the ambiguity in terms of people maybe fighting for the right reasons with the wrong methods, but ultimately like have to do what's effective and whatnot, like all this ambiguity stuff.
Yeah, I felt the ends justify the means sort of mentality. Because the Tokko they're the bad organization. I felt like they were willing to like do what was necessary to preserve the United States and Japan, and then are the Americans, the bad guys? Are they the good guys? I struggled because I felt like the book was taking us along with characters that I couldn't really get behind, and I couldn't really blame Akiko in the end. I guess for me, I didn't see her as necessarily a good guy or a bad guy.
Oh, killing civilians is like totally fine with you.
No, but
that guy.
Is John a bad guy?
It's not her fault how she got there. I feel like she's just a victim of circumstances, kind of.
So cards on the table, right? I mean, she is essentially like a Metal Gear Solid villain in a sense, right? Where she's complaining about the instrumentalization of soldiers, right, being used as tools for political gains, and that is justifiable, right, given her complaints about happening in the first novel, right? On the other hand, right, she is also like a weirdly like Trumpian figure. I think that was what really caught my eye, right? Where she actually says, right, that we are going to commit tremendous atrocities to make our country great again, right? That she is someone who is in control of the symbology of her culture. Who is there to upend a kind of moribund like political caste, essentially, right? That doesn't have, it seems, any kind of direct political goal, right? The goal is simply to kind of oppose what has been wrong in her society, which is understandable, right? And it does make me wonder, like, what comes after, right? Like that the revolution that follows looks very, very similar to what came before it, and in fact, that's something which is commented on at the very end, right? That this person is part of a coup yet again.
Yeah, good point. Maybe Peter, can you give us some context here?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to hear you guys first. Definitely, I was influenced a lot by Metal Gear Solid 2 and the Sons of Liberty, and just like the whole series, as a whole. And like, first of all, I think when it comes to heroes, like I thought a lot about the sort of legacy and like the whole character arc. And what the story is really about. So each of the books obviously have different protagonists and different emphasis in terms of like where they're looking at and the kind of the thematic exploration that they undertake. But I also knew like I wanted this whole series to really be almost like Akiko's journey, where you see her change from like being this totally principled, totally loyal Tokko agent to the end being the person who actually overthrows the entire empire in the United States of Japan. And so in that sense, I was less thinking about is she a villain or a hero and more like how have these circumstances and situations and like events that happened to her affected her journey and where has that led her, right? So for someone like Akiko who has been trained basically to not regard civilian life as that valuable, the fact that she does want to in some ways bring about some type of good, I think, is her sort of journey. And yeah, obviously, I don't think like when I thought about what she really wanted, yeah, I think you're right in that the main thing she wanted to do was bring down the USJ and the whole, empire. But again, like her role, I wanted it to be something where, readers can see what they want into it, right? Like, a revolution means a different thing for very different people. And so that's why, again, when she talks about her first kill, it's very ambiguous, right? She tells different people her first kill was a different person. So there's like all these different histories, and she's also like kind of drawing on this legacy of previous Bloody Marys as well. So again, like I really wanted her role to be more than just is she a good person or a bad person, or even if you sympathize with her or not. I just wanted her to be someone who initially you're horrified by, and then as you come to learn more about her, you might not know everything about her, but you see that there's a lot more going on. To me, like if I were to say anyone was sort of a hero per se, I would go with maybe Reiko, because like the book starts with her and kind of ends with her. I would say in the classic sense, even though she has a lot that's not good, but like in a sense she followed the Sons of War because she really believed in them. And I think like all revolutions start out with like really positive motivations and intentions, and then obviously as people take power, they change it. It's kind of like Animal Farm, where the animals take over the farm and they have these good motives, and by the end they're the same as the humans. And so that was sort of the arc I was following with the Shogun Yamaoka, where he starts off as this revolutionary figure who really wants to bring good to the society, and then ends up pretty much being the same. And so like again, that gets into like, is that just a repercussion of having power? Is that like inevitable, or is it possible for people to be good? And then that gets a lot into like Foucault and the philosophy of Foucault, where he explores history less from the perspective of like will and whatever, but it's more about power and how different institutions are used in the service of power. So yeah, these are like, again, like I'm getting into that. And then Wakana, obviously he has a different arc in that, in the first book, his father was killed, right? He was kind of like Akiko's mentor. And that was sort of, if you didn't pick up on that, again, I made that kind of subtle, but like for him, he chose his duty over family. And for me, I really wanted Bishop in the end to choose family over his duty. And that was sort of his arc again. And that might be more selfish, but again, I just wanted to show the differences between him. And like that, the original title for the book was Sons of War, because, it was a tribute to Metal Gear Solid 2, but it was also just the idea of how the idea of sons are interpreted in different ways, and like offspring and legacy, right? So,
sure.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Sons of Liberty in Metal Gear Solid 2, they're the bad guys, right? They're Solid Snake's crew, basically.
Yeah.
So immediately going into the book, I was like, I don't know about these guys.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up Foucault. Actually, the person that came to mind for me was Camus in The Rebel, right? Who argues, right, that like, because Camus, right, he was in the French Resistance, World War II, right?
Yeah.
Working against Sartre, who is complaining about like how we need something bloody and important, even though he was way off in exile, right? And Camus' argument is like, rebellion is the result of a distrust in justice, that you don't believe that the systems of justice are going to are going to work as they should, and that's definitely where we are when this book begins, right? But what Camus really does is so interesting is he says that rebellion is inherently an immoral act, right? You must do immoral things because that's the only way that you can ever disrupt the status quo, right? And so the innovative idea he has, what a rebel has to do at the end of a successful rebellion is to basically turn themselves in, to let themselves become sort of like to give themselves up to be judged by their society. That's the only way for him, right? That any kind of regulation have. Otherwise, the society is based off of these these immoral acts.
Interesting. Wow, we're getting into like Camus philosophical territory.
Yeah, that's kind of where we are at the end of the book, right? Where nobody is being held responsible in that way, and so like it's just power is coming in to kind of counter power.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Camus, and I also watched Melville's movie Army of Shadows, like the French movie, and that was also very like the whole revolution in there and like how they're fighting against the Nazis in the French Resistance. So. Again, that I was obviously influenced by a lot of that, and just in terms of like the atmospheric feel of it.
Yeah, I feel like in the book it was all summed up in this one phrase that you had written like later on in the book, which was like everyone thinks that they're doing the right thing, but they're really just hurting each other more and more. It was just like where everyone who's like doing something is like killing some other family, and that family comes back and kills back some other family. It actually makes me wonder, in your uncut extended like director's edition, did Makoto and like other like protagonists from your prior books come back and make the ending even more epic, where like they all like somehow gotten into each other's lives and like messed each other up, like Makoto killed Akiko and then Akiko killed Makoto's son, and
I'm so glad you asked that, because yes, they did all come back.
Everyone all came back. Okay, still have a copy.
Like Makoto, Griselda, like they were all involved in the battle, and like it was like a big reunion. And stuff like that. So, and then Kazu, he had his twin daughters. They came too. They're mecha pilots, and they were all in there. So,
and so
we need to go back to what we talked about last recording, where there just needs to be some kind of like web repository of like the like extra content or whatever you call it. The
extended USJ universe or something like that?
Whenever they make the movie, you know how like Star Wars had like the extended edition? We're going to get the Peter Tieryas extended edition someday.
Make it happen. It's like the Lord of the Rings.
Well, like the thing was,
with anime adaptations, it's different from the book, right? They can't do the exact same thing. They'll take the extended edition.
Well, structurally, like it wouldn't work as well, because now like I've cut so much and the plot has changed so much. So, like actually some of the characters who survive in this one actually died in the original. Like, I mean, I guess this is not a big spoiler, but Kujira originally died in the original one. And his death was like to show how much Akiko had changed, because she's the one who kills him, and stuff like that. But that ended up, because Kujira wasn't a main character, it ended up being such a distraction. So we ended up cutting that whole sequence. So, stuff like that, where, and then Makoto and Griselda obviously react to that and, whatnot. So,
Interesting. Well, we'll make this extended edition happen. We'll have to talk after that.
I just want a copy. Just send me the copy. Email.
Yeah.
What you should do is put in the extra chapter that's like the Marvel Civil War, which is like Thor and Hulk sitting in Australia having coffee or something like that. Just have what is.
They're just sitting on their mechas, just hanging out on the beach.
They're just like, what's going on in the news? Oh, okay.
Amazing. So yeah, I mean, I think what I'm getting out of this, at least, like, there's just a lot of shades of gray. My personal take is Akiko just was not justified in killing civilians for what she's doing. But I mean, she has that extra goal in mind, so definitely some shades of gray going on there. Okay, so let's move on to a slightly different topic. I wanted to talk about the tech in this book a little bit. So obviously, so this book, takes place in 2020, the same time as now. No coronavirus, apparently, for some reason. But yeah, I mean, we're talking portals are still a thing. Mechas are still around, but they just appear to be more advanced. I wanted to go to John specifically as our most tech-minded person here. I mean, especially as you skipped the last novel, you went straight from first to last, and that's like, I think, 40 years or so of technology. John, did you have any knee-jerks as far as, is technology too similar, or are you expecting more from this kind of alternate universe, or what were your thoughts?
I was a little taken aback by like the mechas for rent sort of economy for movies, and that was funny. No, I really liked the attack of the nanorobots. I thought that was pretty cool with the micro machines.
Yes, that's true.
I don't know. I dug that sort of stuff. The action. So some of them were like, "Oh, you've got this like wicked blade. I hope that my suit gets that in the next battle." I'm like, "You guys are in a battle right now. Maybe you should just do what you got. Talk about that later." I was in the middle of the action. I wanted them to continue the action forward instead of talking about like what their future was. I was like, "Your future could be over now. You could be dead. You should focus on that."
It's definitely like a little anime influence there, where they have time to pontificate about like, oh, I wish I had that sword, like as they're being pummeled senseless.
I will say the one fight sequence that I thought it was the most unrealistic was when the enemy mecha was supersonic and they were having conversations while the supersonic mech was attacking. I was like, whoa, hold on. This guy's moving really fast. You better focus on the fight. Not smiling at each other, telling jokes.
Yeah, there's some points where like they happen to have their communications open to everyone so everyone can hear, and I mean it felt like it was for plot at least. But I mean, as far as believability goes though, like for me the one thing that stood out to me, like we're using smartphones in 2020, but like I can't imagine having anything resembling a smartphone in the 1980s. So I was wondering if Peter, if you were going to kind of pull out some kind of new telecommunications thing or some kind of other like life-altering technology. I think the most tech we got as far as advancement goes was with the mechas. But did you have any thoughts about bringing in some new tech, advancements and that kind of stuff, or would that just have muddied things up?
Yeah, no, it was, again, these are areas that I explored in like the world building sections that I ended up just cutting out because it ended up confusing it more. Sure. So I really wanted to focus on the plot, and I totally understand what you guys are saying about like them starting to talk in the middle of the mecha battles, and kind of throws off the pacing. So, but it was more just because I think like if you didn't have some sort of communication or interaction, it would just be a bunch of huge robots fighting each other. So it was, you guys are right. It's for plot device purposes.
That's a classic anime trope where you see like the character like yelling at the giant robot and the pilot yelling back at the character, and you're like, are they both just monologuing at each other in a way that happens to make a conversation? Because that's actually what's happening.
That's a fair point. Well, to be fair, I generally enjoyed the mecha fights a lot in this one. I think something we were talking about a little bit, the co-host yesterday, was we're kind of hoping for a little bit more as far as like how big are these things? I think was it the loader mechas or what are
the labor mechas? Laborers, essentially. Yes. I totally thought that anyway, but yeah, I was actually taken back by that too, stuff, because I think there's one reference where they were like, one mecha is only like 6 meters tall. So I was like, okay, 18 feet. That's pretty big. But then they were then some description said, oh, and then they went to the living quarters of the mecha. And I was like, they have a studio apartment in the mecha? That's a really big fucking mecha. Like, you have an apartment building in there? Like you have 6 people living in this mecha? Like, wait, how big are we talking now? Like, are we talking like skyscraper big? Or are we talking like,
They're
18?
pretty big. Like, the bigger ones are like 30 meters.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're like, they have living units inside of them. And it's basically like almost like an aircraft carrier or something. But not as big as an aircraft carrier, but they're huge. Like the massive ones, but like that's the big thing I think I try to introduce is that the older ones, the mechas were bigger, and as it proceeds, the mechas get smaller just because they're so expensive to make and just to upkeep. So that's why like the Katamari class, they're really tiny, and they have the magnet guns to kind of defeat other mechas. So that was like the whole idea behind that. But the other thing that I kind of wanted to suggest was that because things between the Nazis and the Empire have sort of come to a standstill because it's so expensive. Like, they're pretty much locked, and if they attack each other, they know they'll just end up wiping out both each other, because of the mutually assured destruction. So a lot of them, the technology has started to shift to becoming more, effective, efficient, and smaller and stuff like that. So,
yeah, interesting. I kind of want like a comparison chart or some kind of visual aid to tell me the difference between all the different types.
Yeah.
But back to Katamari for a second. I mean, I don't know if you guys played the Katamari Damacy games, but every time, it's worse. It might even be worse for me just because I have to hear the word Katamari every time it came up in the audiobook. But like, I just was like making like the little hand motions that the prince makes in those games, like when he's rolling the ball, just like singing the little theme song to myself.
Yeah, you didn't just start hearing like as this mech fight's happening.
And then I used my awesome magnet gun. I'm like, da 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 da. So, yeah, it was a pretty good reference. I mean, that's obviously a reference to the games, right, Peter?
Yes, of course.
Okay, all right.
No, definitely, yeah.
What if he said no?
I know. Like, wow.
We were way off.
Outside he says yes, the inside he says no.
One other reference, and I don't know if it was confusing, was that at the end, like, they'd meet 9 different mechas in Los Angeles on the way to fighting the 3 revolutionary Bloody Mary's mechas, and all of those are kind of named after the 9 ships that the crew of Pequod meets on Moby Dick.
Oh.
So like on the way to finding Moby Dick, like there's like the 9 different ships, and each of them has like a sort of thematic or kind of symbolic representation, and so that's kind of reflected in the second half of the revolution. So
Nice. Yeah, I didn't catch that at all. But that's.
Yeah, no, it was meant to be very obscure, and I bring this up just because right now I'm working with a Japanese translator, so I give him detailed notes on why everything is named the way it is. So yeah, it's kind of like
you don't want like horrible mistranslations between the countries like we're used to from like the 90s and whatever.
Will the Sigma still be the Sigma in the Japanese version? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, and that's from Mega Man X, the main villain, Sigma.
Charlie,
So
I feel like you should have picked that one up, Charlie.
I was wondering if that was. I was assuming it was the reference because I think the last book also had Mega Man references.
Yeah. So
I was like,
well, like Sigma's a revolutionary, right? He was part of like the Reploids, and then he leads a revolution because he wants to free all of them. So that was kind of like a symbolic thing with Sigma. So
interesting.
Yeah.
There's another reference that I caught that I was wondering about whether or not it was a deep symbolism, which was a family brought in one of their broken electric sheep for repair.
Yeah.
Aki thought, do androids dream of electric sheep? And
yes.
Their theme there is like humanity and like what defines humanity and empathy. I wasn't sure trying to like really like seriously imply like the United States Japan like had this serious humanity crisis, or what you thought about when you dropped that electric sheep in that book.
Oh yeah. That's got to be a PKD reference.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Did we miss any others? Are there any other big ones?
There's a Man in the High Castle reference.
Oh yeah, like looking down from their. It's like the man looking. There's some like looking on from up high in their castles, and I was like, high castle, I got
it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. Well, cool. Well, let's move on. One of the things we really wanted to talk about was the near the end of the book. Bloody Mary, does this Tokko data release. exposing all the information, pretty obviously weakening the Tokko and the primary government of the USJ at the moment. It's funny because Vincent brought this up. He's like, that you should parallel that to the Edward Snowden stuff. And I'm like, I was thinking of like the Captain America movies, where they dump all of the SHIELD info out when they dump all at the end of that movie. But yeah, I mean, as far as for this group, like, what is that the main objective of releasing that data, just to weaken them? Like, what are they trying to accomplish here? And is the parallel to the Snowden data release, is that a valid one?
So obviously, like, for the Tokko, knowledge is power. So by releasing all this knowledge, they're basically losing all their power, right? It's kind of weakening them. I didn't think of Snowden per se. I thought more of like the Sony hack when that happened, where it was, like everything was released, and that was like kind of a big shock, like for everyone, at Sony and stuff. And just that, but it was happening after that. It was like it seemed like every other day someone was being hacked and all the information being released. So like, but again, I think, it's on a similar track, right? Where it's just, we have like pretty much there is no more privacy. I feel like, and like all our information, if you really want to find it, you can find it out there. So, again, it's getting into like, if that information is so valuable, and it kind of identifies who we are, and if that's all revealed and exposed, like, is that an even more deadly weapon than actually killing us, right? Like, of course, I mean, obviously killing someone is much more deadly, but like, like in her mind, in terms of like the revolution that she's kind of leading, like, it's kind of exploring her motivations, and she wants it to be a complete defeat of the empire, not just like physically, but also spiritually, mentally, from a knowledge perspective, and in every basic way. So
that's really interesting, because I thought you had taken it a step further, because I thought that the whole purpose behind the leak of everyone's dirty laundry was to make it so that the leadership was so tainted in the eyes of the public that they could never experience like forgiveness, and that essentially they either had to fight the empire because the empire knew that they were so bad, or they had to like just kill themselves essentially. So I thought like it was almost like Akiko was trying to say, hey, you guys better either rebel and stand against the empire because they're coming to kill you, and because you have no way out essentially. And that is the end of the United States of Japan, because we're going to declare independence. We're going to get free because nobody can essentially be innocent in this kind of situation. That's what I push towards.
You make a really good point, and I think in many ways Akiko is cynical about people's willingness to fight for the truth. Even if they found out their leaders are horrible, will they actually take action against them? And I think that's where she's like, she doesn't believe in them enough. So.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. There was like a complacency among folks about. I mean, there were people who were who were sort of uninterested in the destruction of the city, even at the expense of their own jobs. I just thought that there was a cynicism and an implied complacency. So this was like her way of sort of like sailing to the new world and burning your ships so you can't go back.
If everyone's executed, you might as well fight back for survival.
Yeah.
That's the Metal Gear stuff here, where it's like the soldier is saint, right? The soldier is somebody who, like, by virtue of fighting for their lives and for their comrades, that they become the moral superiors of the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And I wanted to bring up another point we were talking before about the nature of the revolution. That I feel like the Tokko data release, it's emphasized well enough in the book, but I mean, you're talking about when you take a look at the actual nature of the revolution, like a handful of defected officers, as far as I can tell, who have built mechas and are just like raising the city. Like, what chance do they have when they don't have popular support, and especially when they're killing civilians? And then you bring in the Tokko data release, I'm like, okay, now you have the chance of getting the actual population on your side. But for me, just it conflicts a little bit with. I was just hoping for a little bit more of clarity on Bloody Mary's message, because she both wants to murder everyone and also change public opinion. So, yeah, I don't know. That actually helped it make a little bit more sense to the revolution that like didn't seem to, like, I didn't get. I mean, there's revolution and there's like a few people killing lots of people. Well, so let's see how we're doing on time. I think we need to go on to the segment that I think everyone's been waiting for. We're going to do a rehash of the last one we did, where everyone's going to have the chance to give a little bit of an elevator pitch for Cyber Shogun Revolution. And then after we've all gone, then we will then vote and see which one is perhaps the best. I'm personally waiting for Vincent's. He always has a.
Whoa.
Not to put you on the
Don't
spot.
oversell me here.
All right, and then Peter, we'll ask you to give one as well, but you get to go at the very end after.
Okay,
after
thank
all
you.
of us have given our elevator pitch. So I hope all you guys are ready. I will go first. Have you been reading Peter Tieryas' other USJ Universe novels and been bored by the fact that their main characters have been complete and utter nerds? Then this book is right for you. A Tokko agent with a literally tortured past and an army mecha pilot involved in secret conspiracies form a buddy cop adventure tracking down an assassin who isn't afraid to dismember her victims. Pick up Cyber Shogun Revolution now, for when your dystopian futures aren't dystopian enough.
Damn. Yes.
Okay. Jeez, that's a cold reception. Let's go to Vincent right away.
Oh, come on. All right, so you guys know my name is Vince, right? So this is going to make sense when I start this commercial, okay? Ready?
Like cross stick or something? What are you doing?
Hi, it's Vince from Sham Wow. You'll be saying wow every time you read a Peter Tieryas book, in particular, Cyber Shogun Revolution. It's like a mech anime. It's like a history book. It's like a blockbuster Hollywood action movie. Read this in your house, your car, your boat, your RV. Cyber Shogun Revolution holds 12 times the plot twist of a normal book. Why do you want to suffer through any other book? It's set in Japan. You know the Japanese always make good stuff. Now we're going to real time. Listen to this. Listen to this. I'm just flipping through the pages. Can you hear the action? Right now, you following the audio guy? See, when I'm telling you, Cyber Shogun Revolution, you'll be saying wow every time. Cyber Shogun Revolution sells for $16. You get one for the house, one for the car, two for the kitchen, and two for the bathroom. But if you call now, within the next 20 minutes, because we can't do this all day, Tieryas will write a fourth book free. That's 4 United States Japan books for the price of 3. Call 1-800-Akiko, no! Beware. Cyber Revolution Imitator. Call 1-800, Akiko, no! That's 1-800-Akiko, no!
Wow, I was not disappointed at all.
Well,
Wow.
That's a lot
Only
of odds.
very mildly racist. Good job.
It's in the commercial. It's in the commercial. It's like the funny thing about the commercial is it actually says that ShamWow is made in Germany, and Germans make the good stuff. And I was like, wow, what a counterpoint! It's perfect.
You should have included that part. I think that's a solid entry. All right, so let's go to Charlie. Charlie, let's hear your elevator pitch for Cyber Shogun Revolution.
So, we all know Shakespeare wrote all the stories we're telling, right? Wrong! There's no robots! There's no mechs! There's no cyborgs! Read Cyber Shogun Revolution.
Okay. Wow. Good.
Both Shakespeare, you know it's good.
I like it when the people yell at me. That's how you know it's good. Let's go to John.
Of course.
John, what's your pitch?
Oh gosh. Are you ready to step? Oh gosh. You can't laugh before I start. It's not going to be that funny. It's you're
You're going to have an
like,
actual sincere pitch? Go ahead.
No. Maybe. You'll have to find out. Are you ready to step into an alternate universe of technology, violence, and adventure, but not yet hungry enough? Read Cyber Shogun Revolution, where all of your violence is completely matched up with sausage and all kinds of condiments. Yours to enjoy, the New York Times bestseller in both the food and the adventure category, Cyber Shogun Revolution by Peter Tieryas.
Wow, that's pretty good. Although I wonder what your pitch would have been for the last book, where there was like a million times as much food.
More food.
Yeah.
More
The Nobel
food?
Prize for
Way
food.
more food.
John, you made me just imagine the most messed up food, like a food eating competition ever.
Are they doing it in the mechas? Is that what it is?
Or like with violence, that's like watch something terribly violent and eat at the same time.
Can't go wrong with that. But let's go to you, Adrian. What is your pitch?
Okay, so I saw this more as like a on the book blurb, I suppose.
Okay.
Do you remember your first kill? If the answer is yes, then Cyber Shogun Revolution is a great book for reminiscing and reflecting on that moment, because the most important question is the one you aren't allowed to ask: why?
Wow. Wow, you're really
Population just went up 5 million %.
yeah.
Again, the question being, is this who you want to read your book?
Do 90% of the readers of this book, do they own shibs? Is that what's doing? Why?
I can only assume yes.
What is our new pitch? Do you own a shiv? Then you'd like Cyber Shogun Revolution.
Are you updating your pitch, Charlie?
How did we get here?
I just meant to pitch a good book. What happened?
So sorry, Peter. We're so sorry. Don't use any of these.
Yeah, please.
Unlike
No,
last
these are
time.
great. These are great.
My original pitch was just go listen to my pitch from the last book. It's just as good, and it has.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Peter. Hard acts to follow, but what do you got for us?
Oh geez, I didn't prepare because I was like, I'm gonna think of something on the spot. But I was just gonna say so yeah, let me try it. So no one survives an alliance with the Nazis, not without the use of force. Cyber Shogun Revolution is the third and final book in the series, so please check it out.
All right.
Oh, wow. That's good enough to put on the book.
I
That's
know.
pretty good.
I think if there's one of us that could have this actually on a jacket, I think it's Peter's, for obvious reasons. All right. So we have that's 6 pitches. So I'm gonna quickly go back through them. So mine, when your dystopian futures aren't dystopian enough. Vincent's, the ShamWow ad. Charlie, Shakespeare didn't do this. John, combination of food and violence. Adrian, why remember your first kill when you can read this book? And Peter, actual legitimate pitch. That's my summary.
Actual legitimate pitch.
Yes. All right. So let's do some voting. We'll go in the same order that we gave the pitches. You know, Charlie, Shakespeare didn't do mechas, and that's why I'm going to give you my vote. It's true. All right, Vincent, where's your vote?
John, you brought in the food aspect, which is important, even though I don't like sausages as much as the characters in this book do. I got to give it to John because he the New York Times food column, how can you say no to that?
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
All right, Charlie. Can't vote for your own.
I mean, can I vote for Peter's actual legitimate word?
Yeah, you certainly can.
Yeah, okay, I do
All
that.
right. Peter's on the board. 3-way tie for first
Thank
place
you.
right now. All right, John, how about you?
I think Adrian's pitch was great. I think you need to expand into the prison market for this book. And I really loved that. Did you enjoy your first kill? You had me there. Yeah, I didn't need to say anything more than that.
Wow. Okay. Adrian, how about you?
Sway tie.
Yeah, it's a 4-way
That's
tie.
what I want to know.
John's, because I'm working on my multi-million-dollar idea for a fooding competition now in my head.
Okay, awesome. And how about you, Peter? Where's your vote?
I'm gonna go with sorry, I'm just reading this. I'm gonna go with yours, Star Wars.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great. I'm glad someone voted for me. I hate that.
I liked all of them. I liked all of them, so that's why I read through them all again really quickly because I took notes right now, and they were all great. So
All right. Well, John, you narrowly win the competitions. Can we hear your full pitch once again?
No. I just came up with that on the fly. I have no idea what I said.
Okay.
Yeah, through the magic of audio editing, we hear John say whatever. Or not.
Replay John's voice now, and then
Cyrus, edit it back.
I'll do it. Yeah.
I really don't remember. I said something about food. I'm just
Yeah.
fired.
I'm glad our votes were completely
Plagiarizing me,
well-placed.
John. Don't plagiarize your own pitch.
Wow. So that contest was a sham.
Yeah, wow.
Champ. Wow.
Mother.
Did I win a plurality of votes and not a majority? Is that how we're deciding
Yes.
victories?
Well, yes.
We accept pluralities wholeheartedly just to move things on.
I think, yeah. It's not a democracy.
Oh, geez. Well, all right. Well, let's move on to our final segment. Thing you like the best, the thing you like the least. Good wrap-up segment. And we'll all get to go. So let me go ahead and go first. The best thing about this novel, I liked the honestly, it's compared to the especially the last one where it's like a little like there is this kind of strange mix of like ultra violence and kind of like lighthearted like let's go eat crazy food situation of the last novel. I like the consistent tone of this one quite a bit. I kind of joked about it being like very, I mean, let's face it, everything's really dark, but I think it worked well. I liked like the kind of buddy cop nature of Bishop and Draco. I thought that was kind of neat. So I think there are a bunch of things about that worked really well. Things I didn't like the least, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I had a hard time following Bloody Mary's agenda. She made kind of a cool villain at first, but like right up until the reveal, I'm like, why is she doing any of this? And even when she was revealed, I'm like, it gave like a little bit of satisfaction, but couldn't quite make it super believable for me. I just can't, like, just the indiscriminate killing of people. I just can't understand it, especially if she's trying to do a revolution. So didn't quite come together for me. Let's go to Adrian. Why don't you give us your best thing, worst thing?
Cool. Best thing is I really like the Akiko twist at the end. I think it was just like a really smart way to kind of capitalize on all the kind of moral weight that she has in the first novel and bring it into the third novel and really confound the way that we read that. I think the thing I like the least, I suppose, is that now that you mentioned this is the last book in the series, like it's kind of interesting to think about. Like I don't know how to conceive of like the different players on the board except for the Nazis, because Nazis are always evil, right? Like it's hard to kind of feel like there is even a country, so to speak, of that's distinctly the USJ versus like the overall Japanese Empire to kind of feel proud for. And so like I understand like the need to kind of cut all that world building, but I really would have liked to get a better sense like, yeah, what is happening in sort of the vacuum of power once Japanese Empire is kind of kicked out of the country. Like what does it mean to be a citizen of the USJ that is not simply a kind of emanation of Japan itself?
Extended universe. Make it happen. Okay, cool. Thank you, Adrian. John, how about you? Best thing, worst thing?
My best thing and my worst thing are sort of the same thing. So I was frustrated with the book. You guys are going to hate me for all these reviews. I always say I'm frustrated throughout most of these books. I was frustrated because like there was all this mecha action, but it felt very irreverent. Like in the middle of it, they could just start talking about egg bowls or something. And at first I was frustrated by that book, and by the end of it, I was like, no, it's kind of genius. This is like the Lethal Weapon of sci-fi books, because like tons of people die, but like, you know, Mel Gibson can make a joke in the middle of it. And there's like, I just thought it was, I liked it. In the end, I really liked it. So
okay, good point. How about you, Charlie? Best thing and worst thing?
I think probably the best thing is like, in addition to just being part of this universe where I've really liked a lot of like the world building and kind of the history and all that stuff, like this book feels really comfortable with it. You know, like in sci-fi movies or genre movies, a lot of times they have an obvious like set dressing scene where it's like, ooh, look at our special effects, or ooh, look at the spaceship. Like this book felt like it was confident enough in its own thing to describe something without getting kind of like, yeah, you have a cute vision of like what's going on. Like it feels kind of like now we're in this world and it's really existing and moving on. Probably my one complaint is I think it works for the book, but I like the universe so much that this book just goes by really fast. And like, especially compared to the last book is in such a shorter time frame. Like it feels like it's even shorter time frame than the first book, but it's been a long time since we've read that. So, you know, when your drawback is you left me wanting for more, I guess that's
it's a good sign.
It's a good sign.
Charlie, are you saying you liked it? Was that all right?
Oh, I liked it. It's good.
Thanks, Charlie. All right, let's go to Peter. I mean, feel free to tell us the thing you like and dislike the most about it, or if you have any reactions to any of what we've been saying. Feel free.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. But yeah, no, just in reaction, I love what you guys said. It's really informative for me. And you know, it's I definitely like I definitely felt a lot more freedom with this one because I knew this was going to be the final one. And so I was like, you know, I'm just going to do whatever I want. And like, I mean, within limits, obviously, with the editor, but I just had a lot of fun writing this one. And I felt like the most comfortable with the world because I kind of knew it. So I knew what worked and what didn't work and like kind of where I could push it and stuff like that. So to me, I want, if I'm going to say like a good and bad thing, I'd like to like talk about it from the perspective of the entire series. The thing that I like the most, and it's actually kind of peripheral to the novels themselves, is just like how this novel kind of helped me to meet so many different kinds of people and readers, and you know, like even being on this podcast with you guys, it's really amazing. Like just to have this opportunity through these books to create like, you know, kind of like, you know, from Death Stranding bridges with people. And that to me was like the most important thing, just because, you know, again, like as an author, I'm putting down these ideas and I have no idea how people are going to react to them. Like, are people just going to be like, this is bullshit and this is like, this makes absolutely no sense. And how dare you write this alternate history with mechas? Or people, you know, like, and when I hear you guys comment on the ideas and the stories within and treat it with so much, gravity and poignancy. It means a heck of a lot to me. So I thank you very much. And I think in terms of like if there's a thing that I didn't like, it's looking back, I really wish I could rework United States of Japan, just because I felt that like Mecha Samurai Empire is a book where, I might have a few quibbles here and there, but overall I'm very happy with the book. Cyber Shogun Revolution, again, I'm very happy overall. And I think, like, if anything I was going to change in Cyber Shogun, I think hearing you guys talk, I probably should have done a little more with Bloody Mary. But like as a whole of the series, I would say United States of Japan, like, that was a book where I was trying to do too much at all, like kind of squeezing it into one book. And I think, I wish if I could go back and I could add a few chapters here and there and kind of like, you guys were saying, like kind of have an extended director's cut, I would feel very happy with the book. Just because, again, like I think there were areas where I was working kind of not knowing in terms of like how it would proceed, because I was very nervous because, again, I wanted to get into the tragedies of World War II, and I wasn't sure if introducing mechas into that would be too irreverent or too, it would kind of distract from the very serious message within the book. Whereas by the second and third book, I kind of knew what I wanted to do and kind of what was working, what wasn't. So again, like, that looking back on the series is one thing I wish I could do.
Yeah, I imagine having the first book, sell and all that is probably important too. You can't just throw in all of the world building stuff you want. I would suspect.
That's really fascinating because I completely disagree, which is hilarious. I thought that.
Sorry, you got to elaborate more. I'm curious to hear now.
Well, I think it works really well as a dystopia, right? Because like you present all the really cool things that Japan, Japan which is uninterrupted in its industrialization could accomplish. At the same time, like it's a really horrendous place, right? Like human life is super cheap in there. You have a really good sort of critique of like American politics and American idealism in the in the resistance groups, right? It just felt like a really kind of well-rounded. Like I feel as if, by excluding the Nazis from it in a way, and by looking so much at the problems in this society as well as the potential benefits, it just felt like a more complete novel in that respect. Because the Nazis are like always going to be a flawed sort of tool of critical thinking, right? Because Nazis are super evil, and so you just never learn anything about yourself when you reflect against Nazis, right? But here it is absolutely like reflecting against, like as you say, like the horrors of Japanese internment, and of course like the American ideology, which on the one hand like you feel bad about the occupation, on the other hand, right, you have to kind of admit there were some awful things that happened. The Americans did. I thought the novel did a really good job of melding those really complex things together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm really glad you pointed that out. And I think, like, for me, it's more like structural stuff I would change. Like, just to give a really quick example, there's a flashback with Kujira, the older Kujira, his mom. And in that, like, that scene was actually a lot longer in the original, and it got into a lot more of, like, there was an actual battle and whatever. And in the way it currently stands, like, the fight against like the Nazis and sort of like the revolution, like the George Washington's bring in like sort of like Nazi like contraband, and that battle kind of happens randomly. Like they're like actually on the way somewhere, and then they meet them. And I wish I could have integrated that more into the plot, where it had kind of like a more thematic and symbolic presence rather than like a random fight. So again, when I get into like the things I would like to change, it's more like integrating like the plot pieces better. Like I felt in Cyber Shogun, everything that happened, there was like a reason for it, and they all sort of kind of connected into one another. And it wasn't just random events, but like the actual characters having agency in their movement, and not kind of being like the victim of circumstance, but rather kind of seizing it. And I know that was intentional in USJ, where like Ben and Akiko were kind of riding the waves, and there's like scenes like that where they talk about that. But again, it's more just like, I think as I grow as an author, it's just kind of like bringing that more into it and then kind of integrating that more. So, when I say I want to change a lot, it's more like, plot structure and narrative choices rather than the thematic elements. So, and just to try to bring that out more effectively. But thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that.
Cool.
Well, you know what? I skipped over our resident ShamWow expert, Vincent, for his best things and worst things. So please wow us. Please ShamWow us with your reactions.
I think in terms of like positive, I think my favorite thing was the fact that there was character continuity. And I feel like in every great series, like, Star Wars and, Harry Potter, all the ones that really kind of like come to mind in terms of like longevity, you have characters that go from novel to novel, and you get to see how they develop over time. And having Akiko come back in this book was like a major plus. So I think that was one of my favorite things about this book, was that there's a chance to see other characters come back. And so part of me is very disappointed that Makoto and other characters got like, deleted from this book, because I would have made me enjoy the book even more if I knew like what happened to all these characters. And to that extent, I feel like that also ties into like the cons for this book, because like the Americans completely disappear from this book, and the Nazis, like you don't really hear very much about like how it develops, or like whether or not there's civil war within the German Empire, or if there's anything that happens in the Americas for the Germans. The lack of interaction with the Nazis, even the Japanese Empire or the Americans, feels like you're cooking without salt. Like there's so much opportunity to make this meal taste so much better. You're like, you've got a bland sausage that you just got to add some jam to it or something like you just did that. I mean, the book is already overlong according to your editors. I can see why they would like hate to have you add in like extra chapters for like German protagonists and or American protagonists, but like it just felt like there was so much opportunity to build on that. So I do have to disagree with Adrian in that, because like I know Adrian really liked the fact that you ignore the German and the American aspects and you focus on the Japanese culture, which I can see like is a plus, because if you want to delve into the Japanese side of things, like it is a plus. But it just felt like, I just really want to hear more about like the world. Like, I just felt like I was constrained. And I guess it builds into my second con for the book, which is that, in every like major colonial empire, it always feels like the colonies develop a sense that like, a sense of culture or something that is very different from like the parent culture. Like, the Americans are different from the British, and like, the West Indies and everything like that seem very different from their homeland. And that is usually what sparks like independence, or like the fact that like the motherland understand your personal like issues and tribulations. And that's the reason why you want to revolt, because like they're just going to tax you blatantly, and they're not going to care about like all the plagues and issues that kind of come up in your society. And I felt like that was like a missed topic, which like I felt like America should have had their own culture, had like something very distinct from the empire. But the empire just was so absent from all of the books that it was like, okay, I can understand why you don't contrast between the two civilizations. But it felt like that would have been like the flavor that would have set the context for why Akiko and all these people wanted a revolution, not just the fact that there's violence and betrayal and like, and evil things going on. It's more like, hey, just fundamentally different from traditional Japanese people. But that's it.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Of course.
Sure.
Can I do like this kind of session with you guys for a reprieve from death, like before it publishes? I would love it. Like these are good questions and these are good points. I mean, I'm like, I kind of like thinking back on it, I'm like, wow, I really wish I could have like incorporated some of this stuff. So these are really good points. So I really appreciate it. And thank you.
Extended universe. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep saying it until someone thinks it's a good idea. Yeah. Fan fiction. Yeah.
You just need to like write some vague notes and leave it behind for your child to rip you off in like years or something like that.
Do some Tolkien.
Like just write it as like a total joke and never tell him, or her, whatever.
Okay, well, I mean, we're wrapping things up, but Peter, do you have anything that you want to say or teaser about what you're working on next, maybe, or anything else you want to ask us about Cyber Shogun?
I mean, like, honestly, I wish I could talk to you guys for another couple of hours, because this is fascinating for me. I just want to thank all of you for taking time out to do this, especially in this, strange time. So yeah, no, thank you all. And I know I met a few of you at the reading, but I hope I can meet all of you one day. Maybe just for like when this is all over, we can just hang out or something. So, and like in terms of what I'm working on next, I think I've told you guys, but it's a novelization of the short story I wrote, A Reprieve from Death. And so I kind of wrote it as a sort of like a reaction to apocalyptic fiction, where instead of like this apocalypse where everyone dies, it's like an apocalypse where everyone lives, and how that changes the entire society. And so that was finished, but like with the whole what's going on right now, I'm like, should I revisit, and do I have to change it and kind of show, because our society's changed so much. So like this book, which is set in the near future, will it even like seem realistic in light of what's going on in the past month or so? So these are questions like I got to figure out. And like I'm probably like the first thing I did was I just set it a couple more years later into the future. So it's not like right after all the Corona stuff, because, obviously I have no idea how this is all going to end and what our society is going to look like on the other side. But yeah, like these are like, I think these are questions a lot of writers are asking. And I would not be surprised if you start seeing a lot of plague themed novels in the next year or so.
That's right.
And a lot of people writing, post-apocalyptic fiction, or people like stuck in lockers and whatnot. So I don't want to do that, and I hope there will be a place for reprieve from death, which is kind of like the opposite. But like in terms of like the USJ universe and like Mecha Samurai Empire and Cyber, I'm glad that it's over, in the sense that like I'm glad that I got to do 3 books, because that's also a huge honor too, because a lot of times when you write a book, you don't know if you're going to get to do a sequel. So the fact that I got to do 3 books, I'm really appreciative to my publishers, Ace Rock, and they gave me the opportunity to do this. So, and thank you again for talking.
Hey, we're rooting for you to get your 3rd Seiyan award in a row. The top award in Japan for sci-fi. So after the last 2 novels, the 3rd one, it looks like a shoo-in. So
thank you.
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure.
I'm not counting on it, because honestly, like even for like most books are like in series, they don't win. So like my Mecha Samurai Empire was like the first book in 25 years to win in a series.
Whoa.
So I'm not expecting the 3rd one, but if it even gets nominated, I'd be super honored. So yeah.
Okay, well, cool. Well, thank you so much for jumping on with us. It's super fun to talk with the authors. So awesome that you could join us not once but twice so far. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you. So thank you all.
Okay, well, let's wrap things up here. So, of course, if any listeners out there have feedback or suggestions on books we should read and discuss, you can reach us at subplotofcourse@gmail.com or on Twitter at subplotpodcast. And for next month, we're going to be reading the classic Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. It's going to be
the
a fun
entire
one.
Series?
Just the first one.
Oh, God.
Don't go crazy. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Sayonara.
Goodbye, everybody.
Sausages for life.